Et bienvenue à Kourou, bienvenue au centre spatial guyanais pour le 134e vol d'Ariane. C'est le 9e lancement Ariane Espace de l'année et c'est aussi la 100e fois que l'on lance une Ariane 4. À son bord cette nuit, le satellite Europstar 1 pour le nouvel opérateur de télécommunications Europstar. Pour les commentaires en français, je serai en compagnie de Guy Dubo, notre consultant technique. Je suis Dominique Detain. And for the English, we'll be joined by Simon.
Thank you, Dominic. Hello and welcome to the Guyana Space Center for tonight's launch of Ariane Espace Flight 134. This is also the 9th Ariane launch this year and the 100th time that Ariane 4 has flown. Commentary in English is by Jean-Marc Artaud, my technical consultant, and myself, I'm Simon Hayes. The launcher you've been watching out on your screen for the last few minutes is an Ariane 44 LP, and the passenger is Europstar 1, a telecommunication satellite for a new operator, Europstar UK.
Et Ariane vol 134 est sur son pas de tir à 18 minutes du décollage. Alors pour l'instant, premier point chrono, tout est vert, Guy Dubo, mais hier, il y avait un gros rouge.
Ah, hier, il y avait un gros rouge. Oui, c'est un critère de sauvegarde vol lié au vent en altitude qui a conduit à repousser ce lancement de 24 heures.
Mais ce soir ou ce matin, ça dépend où vous vous trouvez, tout va bien. Et donc on peut le constater, tout est vert sur les différentes indications que nous avons sur cet écran.
Les comptes rendus sont verts, effectivement, et nous apercevons le lanceur sur sa table de lancement, un lanceur 44 LP avec 2 propulseurs d'appoint liquide et 2 propulseurs d'appoint à poudre entourant le premier étage.
On a 2 heures de fenêtre de lancement ce matin, donc c'est relativement confortable. Alors là, on voit donc cette Ariane avec... Qu'est-ce que c'est que cette fumée?
Oh ben, c'est un échangeur liquide qui est situé dans le mât, qui est destiné à refroidir l'hélium, qui servira à pressuriser le 3e étage. Voilà, maintenant nous voyons ce 3e étage avec sa protection thermique.
Et là donc les indications sur la mission de ce matin, avec cette masse au décollage de 418 tonnes pour cette Ariane 44 LP.
Eh bien, c'est le satellite finalement, c'est la performance demandée de 4167 kg pour le satellite qui a conduit au choix de cette version 44 LP qui pesait 418 tonnes au décollage.
Et cela pour placer donc Europstar 1 à 45 degrés S, d'où il pourra desservir 5 zones géographiques.
De l'Europe à l'Asie du Sud-Est.
Un satellite d'Alcatel. Dans la salle de contrôle, eh bien, tout va bien. Alors c'est un petit peu là qu'aboutissent tous les comptes rendus d'événements. On vous découvre ici le directeur d'opération Bruno Gérard.
Voilà, c'est le chef de mission. C'est le chef de mission, Bruno Gérard. Nous allons maintenant découvrir le directeur d'opération, M. Gilson, qui ce soir est le patron de cette salle Jupiter, le centre de contrôle. Jupiter, la tour de contrôle du port spatial de l'Europe.
Alors chacun a bien sûr un rôle bien particulier dans les événements. Et là, on découvre une autre élément important, c'est la cellule de vol.
Voilà, qui est composée, on le voit à l'écran, de M. Jacques Rossignol, qui occupe la fonction ce soir de directeur de vol. C'est dans cette cellule que serait élaborée une décision si...
And the Ariane Space Flight Command Cell is a decision maker for the mission if a critical situation arises regarding the launcher or the launch system.
This will be the 100th flight by a member of the Ariane 4 launcher family, an event which naturally conjures up memories of a certain 15th June 1988, when the very first Ariane 4 lifted off from the Kourou base. As for tonight's launch, an Ariane 44 LP with 2 solid and 2 liquid propellant boosters was used on that occasion. But while target payload performance in 1988 was 3.5 metric tons, the requirement for Flight 134 is 4.2 tons. The launch campaign for this flight commenced at the beginning of October, and we've had a smooth run through. We'll be seeing a film summary of the campaign in just a few moments.
The Tucana ship, designed for Ariane 5, just as its recent brother Colibri, brought in all stages of the launch vehicle as well as its storable propellants directly from Europe to Kourou Harbour. Campaign then started immediately at the assembly dock of Arianespace preparation facilities here at Kourou. And within a week, first, second and third stages, as well as liquid strap-on boosters and vehicle equipment bay, were erected directly on top of the launch platform. Well-proven methods and experience allowed then a timely and speedy sequence of operations and controls, ending up with a global check of the launch vehicle and its flight program just 2 weeks after the campaign start. Improvements achieved by Arianespace and its industrial team members have led to improve the whole campaign duration and cut its duration down to 23 days. The launcher was transferred to the launch pad area to be connected to the 2 cryogenic filling arms set on the tower, and the gantry was then brought in to shelter the launch vehicle until launch day. After fitting the 2 solid strap-on boosters and the upper composite with its encapsulated payload, dress rehearsal with the range facilities and spacecraft operations scheme took place at T-3. Remember, this is tonight the 100th Ariane 4 flight over 12 years.
And more introductions. We shall see Jean-François Laumonier, Arianespace Payload Manager. Jean Ramis, Director Satellite Program Management Europestar. There's Jean-François Laumonier. And Denis Vaillant, Project Manager, Alcatel Space. Other satellite team members are located in the Launch Control Center and the Preparation Building S1, the Alcatel Space film now. Dig that rhythm. Time check, 10 minutes to lift off and all is green, and the final weather report is coming through at this moment. Launcher fueling of the first and second stages and the liquid propellant boosters was completed yesterday, and stage 3 fueling with liquid hydrogen and oxygen is tailing off as we speak.
Actually, the last drop will stop getting into that third stage at the time of cryogenic arms opening, that is T-5 seconds.
And coming up now, we have an interview between Alain Roger, Europestar President and CEO, and Isabelle Laurent-Dereur, Executive Vice President of Globecast.
Europestar is obviously a very well adapted platform for Globecast due to the power, the connectivities and so on, and I'm sure your customer Isabella will be very pleased to use this platform.
Yes, absolutely. If we choose Europstar, it's because all these advantages of high power, flexibility, good GOT, and the possibility to offer to our customers very small receive and transmit antennas, which allows lots of flexibility for multicast application. And the platform we want to set up on the transponders we took with you are obviously dedicated to this internet delivery and internet access services. Multicast application, it's a wide range of services, and we are going to offer all type of internet delivery service, starting from internet backbone, which is not the main goal, but offering caching services, video streaming services, push services for the content provider, addressing the needs of connectivity of the ISPs in India, but addressing also the needs of content of those ISPs by providing, on the other hand, a platform of service allowing the delivery of broadband content to these internet service providers.
And we'll be telling you more about Europstar and its partners later on. And our last piece of film was shot a little more than 5 hours back, and this shows us the gantry withdrawal from the launcher in preparation for the final pre-launch operations.
The gantry rollback took place about 5.5 hours ago. The heavy metallic structure weighing nearly 4,000 tons was jacked up and then rolled back 70 meters away from the launcher in less than an hour. This was necessary to clear the way for the next coming hazardous cryogenic filling operations, which had to be performed in an open environment. And finally, of course, it has also cleared the way for the launcher to lift off straight to the stars.
Well, you were listening in to the final pre-launch weather report just now, Jean-Marc. What did you hear?
Well, the meteor seems pretty good tonight for at least 1 hour from now on. No winds behind limits, no convective clouds, no stormy sessions to endanger the flight.
Well, that's reassuring, particularly after last night's disappointment. So that interfering high-altitude wind has blown itself out, seemingly.
Well, this high wind situation related to people safety implementation in case of crash has definitely improved over the last day.
And we have the latest Meteosat picture of our zone, and this shows a nice absence of cloud cover anyway.
Yes, a neat environment around our range tonight with a few clouds located away from our area of interest.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le début de la séquence synchronisée.
And we're almost up to the last 6 minutes of the count, the synchronized sequence. We'll explain just what happens when we get there.
Top, H0 moins 6 minutes.
And we are now inside the synchronized sequence, and manual control has been replaced by automated control. The reason is very simple. The mass of data to be processed in these final minutes is so vast that there's no other solution, and the two big ground computers take over. So what actually happens at this point, Jean-Marc?
Well, as you mentioned, those two computers take over the monitoring of operational sequence during these last minutes. One handles the fluids process, the other one takes care of the electrical process. And both check out in parallel the timely execution of key points, such as the final fuel and oxidizer topping, the flight pressurization adjustments, flight program loading into the onboard computer, switching the launcher electrical feed to onboard power, checking out temperature criteria prior to ignition, releasing the inertial guidance platforms, opening the cryogenic arms and swing them away from the launcher, and finally give the hand to the onboard computer to run down the ignition sequence.
Well, we're now going to take you on a visit to the Launch Control Center, the CDL, with everything still showing green on the status panel. The Launch Control Center is located in a bunker basement building adjacent to the launcher assembly dock, and it's 1 kilometer from the pad. Here we meet the launch site operations manager, the COAL, in the person for Flight 134 of Christelle Stjorba, the first ever lady COAL. Bravo, Christelle. So what goes on in the CDL, Jean-Marc?
And the CDL operators do monitor fluid and electrical processes throughout the preparation campaign up until the final countdown. Process can be run manually or automatically. There are also desks that are available to monitor safety aspects as well as utility status.
So Christel Stjorba heads a team of how many in the CDL during the countdown then?
Around 80 people, including aerospace and industrial team members, all engineers and technicians.
Well, we've got less than 4 minutes to go and we still stay steadily on green. A moment to extend a more personal greeting to all of you watching, listening and waiting, in particular at Europstar in London, and the many thousands assembled for the occasion in Palo Alto, regular viewers at the 6 sites in France, Washington, D.C. and Tokyo, viewers taking the Space Night TV program in Germany, and of course those of you on the observation sites here in the Guiana Space Center and in the Jupiter building itself. Thank you all for your comprehension regarding our enforced 24-hour postponement. Meanwhile, the complete ground support system is on full standby, and the first-line tracking stations are homed in on the pad, waiting to detect the first sign of movement. Jean-Marc.
Yes, communication and data exchange is already going on between the launch vehicle and its monitoring desks, as well as between the spacecraft and its checkout station here at the technical center. Some of this transmission go with fiber optics, others use the urgent RF mode. However, radars and telemetry will soon lock up onto the launch vehicle. Now, let's have a look at those cryogenic arms that are used to fill the third stage with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. The connecting plates will disconnect themselves at T-minus 5 seconds and retract with the arms away from the launcher. We shall have a close view of this sequence thanks to this camera and image setup.
The preliminaries are almost over. The months of launcher and satellite construction and delivery to Kourou, the weeks of satellite preparation, and the 23-day launcher campaign all concluded with a 15-hour final count. So what has happened in these 15 hours, Jean-Marc?
Well, after a safety and security check in the morning, a few heavy operations took place to prepare the gantry rollback, including platform lifting up and gantry jackup. Spacecraft also started its functional test at T-minus 10 hours up until T-minus 3 hours and 40 minutes. And at T-minus 6 hours, a red and green status control between the launch vehicle, the range system and spacecraft desks have been thoroughly checked. The next big key points after this were the gantry rollback and the surface fueling, but we have commented that already.
Right. Well, a quick reminder for latecomers, wherever you are, you've just made it for Ariane Flight 134 with Europstar FM1. And we come up to the final minute.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute. Top, H0 moins 1 minute.
We're inside the last 60 seconds and the launcher is on onboard power.
The last 4 events to happen in that minute will be the release of inertial guidance platform at T-minus 9 seconds, the opening of cryogenic arms at T-minus 5 seconds, the valve opening for ignition of the 6 Viking engines at time T, and the ignition of 2 solid engines at T plus 4.4 seconds, and at the same time, liftoff.
We just have time to wish all the Europstar, Alcatel and the L'Oral teams the very best of good fortune for their baby. And we'll leave the rest of it to the DDO.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
We have ignition. We have liftoff.
Allumage du premier étage, propulsion d'appoint liquide. Allumage de propulsion d'appoint. Extinction des propulseurs d'appoint à poudre.
And we have burnout of the solid propellant boosters after 45 seconds. We still have a good clear picture from the tracking cameras.
La propulsion est normale.
We are now 1 minute into mission and propulsion conditions on board are nominal.
Séparation des propulseurs d'appoint à poudre.
We've dropped the liquid propellant boosters.
Solid ones.
And you may at this moment hear a rumble, and that's Ariane almost vertically above the mission control here in Jupiter building. We can hear it, we can even feel it. And I think we can already give our listeners an explanation of the trajectory plot.
La propulsion est normale.
And the DDO continues to give us reassuring messages regarding nominal status on board the launcher.
This trajectory plot shows the actual altitude of the vehicle, which is now just above 27 kilometers. Its speed on this trajectory a little bit below 1 kilometer per second, which I remember is 360 kilometers per hour. And the time that you will see, the CIS means that the position of the launch vehicle is given by its spiro-inertial guidance system.
Right, and
Extinction des propulseurs d'appoint liquide.
we have burnout of the
Largage des propulseurs d'appoint liquide.
burnout and jettison of the liquid propellant boosters. And the actual plot, top left of our screen, Jean-Marc.
The actual plot now shows an altitude reaching 750 kilometers, a speed of 1.8 kilometers per
La
second,
propulsion est normale.
which is now nearly 7,200 kilometers per hour.
And in fact, Ariane has been supersonic for almost 2 minutes at this point. And the trajectory plot
Le pilotage est calme.
is climbing up to the next rendezvous, which will be separation of the first and second
La
stages.
trajectoire est normale.
All onboard parameters are strictly nominal, and we're slap on course on our trajectory. And we're
Extinction
now
du premier étage.
first stage burnout,
Séparation du premier étage.
separation 1 and
Allumage du
2,
deuxième étage.
and ignition of the second stage. And we're going to have a computer-assisted replay here.
And we can notice that since the beginning of this flight, every minute and 10 seconds, something
La
important
propulsion du
happens.
deuxième étage
It's a
est
very
correcte.
busy. It is the busiest part of the whole in-flight mission.
For the first 6 minutes, that's exactly all the stages that are going to be getting into ignition and then burnout, except for the third stage that will start its propulsion.
And we shall be dropping the fairing in less than half a minute from now. The payload compartment, of course, has been venting all the way up from liftoff
Tous
to
les
equalize
paramètres bord
pressures,
sont normaux.
internal and external pressures, so that we don't have a flipjack situation when the actual fairing release process is
Séparation de la
executed.
coiffe.
And we have dropped the fairing. All good stuff, because we're dropping excess mass as soon as we possibly can.
So now the spacecraft is exposed to the outer vacuum without having any
In other words,
possible friction, detrimental friction.
the fairing is no longer required as a protective device. And we now have less than a minute to go to termination of the stage 2 combustion phase. And another process which has been going on since liftoff, or is in fact prior to liftoff, is chill down of the stage 3 cryogenic fuel delivery system.
La trajectoire et la propulsion sont normales.
everything on board is still strictly nominal.
Extinction du deuxième étage.
Burnout of the second stage.
Séparation deuxième étage.
Separation 2 and 3.
Allumage du troisième étage.
And the good news, ignition of stage 3.
And all of the stages that we have been that have been separated so far have been falling or will fall in the ocean within the next 2,000 kilometers.
Right. So we are now commencing the long burn time for stage 3, which will take us up from our present speed of nearly 5.5 kilometers per second to the orbit injection velocity of 9.7 kilometers per second.
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
We have a dip in the trajectory which we haven't reached yet, but perhaps you could give a word of explanation there, Jean-Marc.
Yes, the actual trajectory of the launch vehicle.
Acquisition par la station de télémesure de Natal.
And we have acquisition of the launcher signal by the Natal, Brazil downrange tracking station, the last of the radar stations.
So this trajectory that we saw was in fact showing a culminating point and then a lowering point which is bound to accelerate the launcher as it comes closer to the Earth's surface and then bounce up on the latter part of this
La propulsion est normale.
Everything continues to be strictly nominal. And I think we should talk a little about the launcher before we go on to our satellite passenger. We've mentioned several times that this is the 100th Ariane 4 launch, and this is surely something of which we can be justly proud, not only as an achievement for itself, but because Ariane 5 and the future are firmly based on the experience and expertise acquired with Ariane 4.
Well, definitely the expertise acquired with that Ariane 4 launch vehicle do help us for a better and quicker operational optimization. However, Ariane 5 has got different goals, such as better performance, and we can say that now its launch rate is scaling up since we're heading towards 3 Ariane 5 launch in the last between mid of September and mid of December, roughly.
And in fact, that will give us 4 for the year, with 507 due in 15 days. That's a multi-launch, is it not, Jean-Marc?
Yeah, these next 2 launches, as a matter of fact, which we would say are equivalent to dual launches, are in fact comprising 2 spacecraft plus 2 mini satellites. So in fact, in each case, we have 4 separations to perform.
And that is valid also for 508 scheduled for December?
Yes, 508 also has 2 main passengers and 2 mini satellites on an extra support ring.
And the target for next year is how many Ariane 5s?
It's 6 Ariane 5, and probably the year after we'll...
Les paramètres bord sont normaux et le pilotage est calme.
Everything is strictly nominal on board.
We'll come up to 8 then.
So in parallel to all that, of course, we have some very extensive
La trajectoire est normale.
performance enhancement programs running.
That's right. We don't stop with the Ariane 5 as it is now, but the enhancing program aims at pushing up the performance of the launcher from 6 tons in geostationary orbit as it is today to 8 tons and then 10 and then 12 tons, and this over the next 6 years in step of 2 years for each step.
And this massive increase in payload capacity, of course,
Fin de visibilité par les moyens de Kourou.
is aimed to cater for increasing satellite mass values and to enable us to do dual launches with really big uns.
Yes, the dual launch capacity remains one of our main targets, and it's obvious that with increasing mass of spacecraft, we have been launching more and more single launches with the Ariane 4 so far.
One final word, perhaps.
La trajectoire est normale.
We had 9 contracts signed for the ATV missions. How do these line up in terms of payload mass? The ATPs?
Well, this is using most of the payload performance of the vehicle, but it is not going into geostationary orbit. It goes towards the ISS, and that allows to satellize over 22 tons into
Trajectoire et
orbit.
propulsion normale.
And we continue to get these reassuring, strictly nominal announcements from the DDO. Before we move on to our customer and passengers, a word about the order book. Further two Ariane launch contracts were signed recently for N-Star-C and Stellat, and the latter is particularly topical because the joint customers are France Telecom and, guess who, Europstar. Anyway, moving on now to our customer, Europstar. We promised to tell you something more about the company, and so here we go. This is a new London, England-based telecom operator. It's an Alcatel company and a member of the Loral Global Alliance, owned 51% by Alcatel Spacecom and 49% by Loral Space and Communications. So what are the user applications that FM1 will provide, Jean-Marc?
Well, main applications include digital video broadcasting, internet access, remote communication, and also internet protocol multicasting.
Acquisition par la station télémesure d'Ascension.
And we have acquisition of the launcher signal by the Ascension Island tracking station.
We have to mention also this important coverage of populous areas that we've seen in the earlier presentation, and the capacity of large connectivity of the spacecraft, which is made possible by its high onboard power, which is the spacecraft is one of the highest power existing now on the market.
Right, and we have 6 minutes, less than 6 minutes of burn time with the third stage to go. Well, the second member of what we might describe as the customer triumvirate is Alcatel, and apart from its stake in the operating company, Alcatel is involved in the industrial and operational sides through Alcatel Space Industries, prime contractor for Europstar FM1, and providing the system operating function from Toulouse, and Alcatel Space, which is responsible for the ground segment. Alcatel is also involved in a number of other current and upcoming programs of direct interest to Ariane, Jean-Marc, is it not?
Yes, we have presently EurasiaSat, which is a satellite in joint venture by Alcatel with the Turkish Telecom, which we will launch around the end of November, beginning of December. And we also signed recently...
Cutting in just a second, on your screen now is Dr. Jürgen Schulte-Hiller, who, the German project founder, who obtained rights to orbital positions at 43, 45 and 47 degrees 30 minutes east, registered for the ITU back in 1991, of course, direct interest to the whole Europstar operation.
Yes, the second spacecraft I was mentioning, Simon, was Stellat, which is a joint venture between Alcatel and France Telecom, and which has been quite recently signed with Ariane Space.
And a word then of Loral, continuing its long-standing relationship with Ariane and Ariane Espace. Loral Space and Communications is here in a dual capacity as joint customer with Alcatel Spacecom and joint manufacturer through Space Systems Loral with Alcatel. And SS Loral is also responsible for control of the satellite during the launch and early orbit phase up to final orbit station acquisition. And what about the ground segment, Jean-Marc?
Well, the ground segment...
La propulsion est normale.
Comprises a spacecraft control center, which is based in Toulouse, with a backup at Hawley, Pennsylvania, from Laurel Skynet facilities. And also a mission control center, which is located in Toulouse, with a backup telemetry and tracking station at Léam-Rambouillet. The communication center is also located at Léam-Rambouillet.
And here we have some actual pictures of the satellite, which we shall be putting into transfer orbit in 4 minutes from now.
Okay, these pictures show some views of the campaign, where filling of the spacecraft, some it combined operations, setting up on the payload adapter, and this ending up with the fairing enclosure. And finally, the transfer to the launch tower, where it has been assembled on top of the launch vehicle in the past few days. So now we have reached the lowest point on the trajectory.
Indeed.
And we're gonna go far and farther away from the Earth on an increasing speed.
And we are up to 7.24 kilometers per second.
As a matter of fact, it's interesting to notice that this lowest point of the trajectory was exactly crossing the equator line.
Right.
In the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And the point where the separation will be performed will be straight over the west coast of Africa.
Indeed. Separation in less than 3 minutes from now, and in fact we're within just about 1 minute from shutdown of stage 3, but a little bit of satellite data perhaps.
Yes,
before we get there.
The satellite is using an FS 1300 platform by Space System Laval, which is powered.
Acquisition par la station télémesure de Libreville.
And we have acquisition by the Libreville,
which is powered then with bipropellant thrust for apogee motors and in-orbit maneuvers. And it uses
la trajectoire est normale.
Momentum wheels for its 3-axis stabilization. The payload comprises 30 transponders in KU band.
And we have 20 seconds of propulsion of burn time left, and as you can see, bottom left, bottom right on your screen, we are there. We are at 9.7 kilometers per second. Orbit injection velocity achieved.
Extinction du troisième étage.
And that is shutdown of the third stage engine, and the payload
Fin de
still attached
visibilité de la station de télémesure d'ascension.
to the third stage is now in transfer orbit. So with 2 minutes to go, less than 2 minutes to go to separation of the satellite, what is the procedure now? We have a spin-up.
There are different steps that are going to be achieved. Orientation of the component. The component now is still the third stage, which is finished, which is burned out, and the spacecraft is still attached to it. After orientation, spin before release, and then the release of the clamp band will let the spacecraft separate. Later on, the spacecraft will stabilize its spin to a 3-axis stabilized attitude. And
so off the spacecraft will go into its autonomous transfer orbit. The remains of the third stage will be distanced.
They will be first passivated, yes, sir. That's important now to manage the debris situation into orbit. It is mandatory to passivate the last component of the launch vehicle.
Yes, we hear more and more talk these days of space debris, and so we have to do our best to not to worsen the situation. So We are within
20 seconds.
Indeed.
Or something like that.
So there are a lot of people, at least metaphorically, holding their breath in here now. So we'll just wait with them.
Séparation Europestar.
There we are. The best news of the evening. El Arranger, a very happy man. So the satellite Europestar is now autonomous and will be deploying its solar panels within about 3 hours. It should be on orbit station within 10 days. Operational in how long? Well, I think I've heard of a date of early January, which sounds strictly
reasonable.
Absolutely. So the launcher has not quite completed its mission.
Yes, there's a few more seconds, 40 seconds to go before it is finally passivating and we can let it drift on an orbit which is not slightly different from the orbit that future spacecraft will follow.
Right, and we have coming up a replay here.
2, 1, 0. Allumage du premier étage, propulsion d'appoint liquide. Allumage de propulsion d'appoint liquide.
That looked just as good, if not better, than the real thing some while back. And 2 points, we had a very clear view of the arms opening and the clutter falling off the launcher was not bits and pieces that were vital for its survival, but simply the thermal cladding of the second stage. So we shall be having the post-launch speeches in any moment now. We have a very busy program at the moment with how many launch campaigns running simultaneously, Jean-Marc?
Well, we have up to...
Vous avez sans doute noté que nous avons eu un petit problème de transmission qui nous a fait vérifier que nous étions tous bien réveillés. Heureusement, ça n'était qu'un problème de transmission. Et ce 100e lancement est un succès.
Have been able to show you that we've had 58 successful launches. We still have the blue ribbon of successful launches.
Monsieur le Président, nous sommes très heureux
competition. We feel, Mr. President, we're happy to congratulate you on this success. It's for you a birth of the company, although the baby is already of a certain age. You didn't have a satellite in orbit until now, so we're very happy to be able to contribute this towards the growth of your company. We remember the first Ariane 4 launch in 1988, which was also the launch of a startup that was called PanamSat. And Mr. President, I would like to wish you as much success as PanamSat had, and we hope that you will be as faithful a customer as PanamSat is.
Bon, eh bien, pour Alcatel Space,
on behalf
bravo.
Alcatel Space. I'd like to thank Ariane. You don't get used to launches. It's really awful, isn't it? With the loss of the switchover of telemetry, we didn't know what was happened, and if you really realize what happens in the control center, I recommend to you that you look at the telemetry data very carefully. This event is the beginning of a beautiful adventure. We have to get the spacecraft on station by beginning of November. We'll do everything necessary together with Space Systems Loral, who will get the satellite on station at 45 degrees east, and then we will perform the in-orbit testing, and in December we will deliver our baby. We hope it will be the first of a long series for our launcher and spacecraft activities and for the business of the company. So we congratulate all the players. We'd like to thank all those who were still in operations. They are waiting for 20 more minutes to see whether everything's going well. We thank Space Systems Loral, who have performed perfectly well, and all that is remained to say is bravo and keep going.
Comme vous pouvez l'imaginer,
as you can well imagine, it's a very great pleasure to see this first baby of Europstar on its way, particularly with the example you have given us, Mr. Rossignol. That's a very good example, and Europstar and all its team will strive to follow this excellent example. I'd like to thank all the technical teams, the Ariane space teams, the Alcatel space teams, and the teams at Space Systems Loral. I'd also like to thank Alcatel, Mr. Chourouk, Housson, and Tellier, who in the course of these past years have trusted the teams who promoted Europstar. I'd also like to thank Bernard Schwartz and Eric Seller, who also joined us in this adventure with Loral Space and Communications. It's quite an adventure, an important adventure, and as you said earlier, Europstar is not a baby company anymore. It's a company that has joined Loral Global Alliance that is monitored by I'd like to thank our customers also who trusted us before the launch. The spacecraft was not yet in orbit when we already had numerous customers, France Telecoms, Electrotech, Telenor, British Telecom, and our partners who allow us to monitor the network that, as you may realize, cover in its footprint 3 billion inhabitants. I'd like to thank CSIR in South Africa, companies in Singapore, STPI in India. All these partners will allow us to ensure a quick development. Thanks, and thanks again. Thanks to the Europstar teams. Now it's up to us. When Michel has delivered the satellite, it's up to us to make it work as foreseen. We are convinced that will happen, as Alcatel Space Systems, Space Systems Loral worked a lot on the spacecraft. Now it's up to us to perfect the commercial success. And I'd like to thank you all. I'd like to express my thanks for the fact that this spacecraft is a success in orbit, and we will soon send up another one.
Eh bien, à votre service pour le lancement du prochain.
So we're ready to launch your next bird. We're going to keep working. You know that the program for the end of the year is a heavy program. We have many launches to perform before Christmas. I can confirm that Ariane 5 is scheduled on the 14th of November with Pass 1R from Hughes, and after that we'll have an Ariane 4 with also Hughes satellite, Anik F1. I'd like to wish you a pleasant morning.
Huit, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Allumage du premier étage, propulsion d'appoint liquide. Allumage de propulsion d'appoint liquide.
Well, that still looks just as good as the first time. We've come to the end of our evening show. We hope you enjoyed it. We have a very busy program ahead, as you've just heard. Not only up to 4 overlapping launcher campaigns, and busy right through to the end of the year. But it's interesting to note that we haven't a moment to lose, and the firemen, the fire brigade, will be out on the pad refurbishing within less than an hour from now for the next launch. Anyway, we have 2 launches coming up in November, and why don't you come and join us for one or other or both of those. This concludes the proceedings. One final word. We have tonight set a new world record yet again, with a total of 58 consecutive Ariane 4 launches.